Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Wednesday, February 19th, 2025, and today we're going to talk about alternatives to greenhouses, pets in gardens, and hunting wood chips. So let's do it. All right, well, welcome to Wednesday, everyone. It is cold and snowy here. The kids are out of school again. I did manage to get the tomatoes started yesterday, which I did in wind strip trays, just out of ease of literally everything being frozen right now, but delighted to have that project finally going. I need about 50 good grafted plants in total. I started 72, but that will just mean I get to pick the best plants for grafting, and we'll have a lot of choices for the best scion and rootstocks, bottom and top parts, respectively, of the plants. So that should be a good idea. On a more hopeful note for the season, I was working on taxes in my office yesterday. That's not the hopeful part, sadly. And outside, I could hear the sound of a truck backing up. I didn't think much of it, but then Hannah said, that's a wood chipper. And I just about threw my laptop and ran out the door. Now, I hunt wood chippers down every year, the awesome tree service folks who trim trees around power lines, even in frigid cold weather like we're having right now. If I see them stopped at like a gas station or, I don't know, the grocery store or somewhere that I can get to, I will track them down. There was one time I could see them about 200 yards off of the road in the woods. And I parked my car precariously on the side of the road and ran into the woods to chat with them and convince them to dump the chips at my farm. To be clear, this is usually welcomed by them. It's not super weird. They are generally looking for a place to drop chips, but rarely is it easy to actually catch them. So to have them right outside my house, randomly pulling into my driveway, no less, was a nice change of pace. It turns out they were just trimming some trees in the area that are in some that are right around our power lines near our house. But I think I locked in several loads of wood chips because, like I said, they need places to drop those chips, and I was like, yeah, here, like lots. Typically, they have to take the wood chips, one word, to the dump and pay a tipping fee. Basically, they are paying the dump to waste this incredibly nutritious carbon resource. That can not only be a good mulch for the pathways, but a great compost amendment, and I should say, kid infrastructure. In fact, that was one of the things I forgot to mention in my Farming with Kids episode. Kids love piles of compost, piles of wood chips, whatever piled. It will occupy them for hours. Anyway, all that to say, it is worth hunting down tree service folks, arborists, anyone with excessive wood chips, especially when they're in your neighborhood. But sometimes you actually do have to hunt them. They work all over the place, and if you can give them a nearby place to drop the chips, that will perhaps help end their day a little quicker. So that said, it's not a guarantee. Sometimes they will take the easier route. Like, for instance, one time I had them come back to our old farm, which had an epic 1/4-mile long driveway to deal with. And even though I tipped them for the load, which is not requisite, I just wanted them to come back, they never came back, just because I think it was a little bit too much for them to get to that spot. And they had another spot up the road that was a little bit easier to access. In fact, one big reason that we moved from that farm was truck access. And I talk about this with people who ask me about buying land. Truck access is like actually pretty high up there in things I would put on my list of what I'm looking for. Trucks bringing compost, bringing supplies, bringing high tunnel supplies, all that stuff, they kind of need to be able to get to you. For us, we had to get stuff in smaller loads like compost, and because wood chippers and the like wouldn't come back there, not to mention that customers didn't love the one lane long driveway that we had, we found that truck access was costing us like thousands of dollars a year. And there are sites like Chip Drop or whatever, and I know people for whom those have worked in other areas, but for us, it hasn't ever really worked, even at our new property. Tracking down the tree service folks is about the only option that we've had succeed. Of course, the funny thing right now is that they haven't yet actually dropped any chips. So I'm not trying to count my chips before they hatch. But to be fair, their truck was empty when I found them, and it's been snowing for a couple days. But I'm still keeping the faith. They literally called other people in the business to tell them that they could dump here as well. So fingers crossed that will materialize. And the material being wood chips. Anyway, there's your first gardening tip for the day. Chase down the wood chip trucks. They may be waiting for you in a good way. All right, we will take a quick break and then talk about lo-fi outdoor greenhouse options. BRB. It's been too long. Won't you come back to me? If I did you wrong,
Today's episode of Growers Daily is brought to you by Farmhand. I don't know about you, but I got into farming to be in the field growing food for my community, not creating elaborate pack lists, not writing newsletters or responding to emails, not designing and maintaining web stores, and etc. And I especially don't enjoy doing those things after an already full and fulfilling day of growing food. Actually, if I spent less time on my phone and behind the computer, that would be great. If only there were a solution for that. Enter Farmhand. Farmhand is the only all-in-one virtual assistant built by and for farmers. With one single platform, Farmhand enables you to offload your administrative tasks, send and manage communications, and sell more to your customers. Farmhand saves growers an average of 6 hours of administrative load each week. That's 6 hours so you can get back into the field, spend more time with friends or family, or have a life outside of the farm, which is actually a thing. Think about it. What would you do with an extra 6 hours a week? Sign up for a free trial with the link in the show notes, because now is the best time to dial in those systems for the next growing season. Follow the Farmhand link in the show notes to learn more. All right, back to the show.
If you, the listener, are enjoying this content, getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. I will try to get to questions from everywhere the questions come in, but I will always get to your Patreon questions now. Today's Patreon question comes from Patreon member Nathan Leal Crisp, who writes, quote, "What if you don't have a nice protected greenhouse or a quote-unquote good enough greenhouse? Is there any successful ways of propagation you've seen or know of for outside? My understanding is you won't be able to start as early. It might be more labor intensive due to weather, needs more pest deterrence, could be better suited for certain climates, or best suited for particular crops at certain times of the year, etc. Any thoughts on this? I'm working on a tight budget, would like to still have some successful starts due to all the benefits you elaborate on in your videos. FYI, would like to be able to get one in the future and have a blessed growing season." End quote. All right. Awesome questions. Thank you, Nathan. And of course, this is probably on a lot of people's minds as we go into the growing season. So the short answer is yes, there are options for just starting stuff outside that is not a greenhouse. However, like you suggested, that does mean you will not be able to push your season quite as much and quite the same way you do when you start your plants inside of a greenhouse, where the daytime temperatures are generally summer temperatures, even in the late winter. I will say that greenhouses, even small ones, do not have to be terribly expensive or complicated. One of the values I think, or I hope, I bring to this space is a lot of experience, maybe perhaps too much experience in lo-fi farming, meaning I have done quite a lot with quite a little for quite a while. Sometimes to my own detriment, push the boundaries of how little I need. So for instance, we were able in our very first year on our own to build 2 very basic cold frames out of old windows that were not great, but they got the job done enough to grow out our tomato starts and protect them through the cold and when covered with a frost blanket. Old windows and old glass doors are not super hard to find at places like the Salvation Army Restore, or just ask some contractors if they pulled out any windows recently. Also, a lean-to structure built off of a shed covered with some greenhouse plastic is an easy option. But anyway, back to your actual questions about outdoor options that are not the greenhouse. If you are out west, where you generally know days in advance if you're going to get rain, you have the option of just doing plant starts right on a table, somewhere sunny or under a small amount of shade from a tree. Birds could become an issue for you though, so perhaps a light insect netting and or shade cloth wouldn't hurt, especially depending on your climate. They don't usually bother stuff in a greenhouse, the birds, but some sprouts on a table might be a little too tempting, especially for crows who have a well-known affinity for messing with farmers. The issue with doing starts in the open out here is that we get sudden heavy rainfalls that can damage trays really fast. So you would want some sort of see-through non-permeable structure above the plants, even if it's just some greenhouse plastic attached to a partial lean-to off of the south side of a shed that will allow light to come through but not rain. For pests beyond birds, such as mice or other small rodents, just having metal legs on the table that they can't climb up works fine. A card table is usually workable. As long as they can't climb up something and then jump onto it. Deer could also be an issue, so you need a way to protect the plants at night from them. Again, a row cover might be enough, but a desperate deer will figure row cover out, just fair warning. Also, raccoons could potentially get in there if you are using blood meals or fish meals and that sort of delectable thing. delectable if you're a raccoon, I guess, to fertilize your soil mix. Also, with the wind drying out will be more of an issue, so perhaps having some borders built around the table or just expecting to have to water more, those could be some things to think about. So growing seedlings outdoors without a greenhouse is a thing that you can do, but just has to be thoughtful. And again, it won't really allow you to push your seasons a ton, though it will allow you to get subsequent crops ready while the bed is occupied. Now that I'm thinking about it though, there are times I do sort of use this idea of no greenhouse to sort of push the season a little bit, like in the summer and late summer when I'm germinating lettuce or spinach or something that needs a lower germination temperature, or really anything that doesn't love the heat, such as maybe like pea shoots. I typically get those to germinate in the shed before moving them into my greenhouse near the end walls that I remove every season. Removing the end walls basically gives me a clear structure under which to put my plant starts. Of course, there are options for just buying in most of your plant starts and also indoor growing setups as well, but those are going to be contextual, and the latter, the indoor stuff, is outside of my knowledge base, unfortunately. That's an awkward sentence, but you get the idea. I learned how to farm without any electricity at all the first 6 years, so yeah, that's kind of my knowledge base. Anyway, I hope that gives you some stuff to think about. Otherwise, we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, pets on the farm. Yeah, I love pets. Be right back. Today's episode of Growers Daily is brought to you by GrowSmart. Curious if your soil will be ready for planting this spring? GrowSmart can help you find out with their at-home soil tests. They'll ship it right to your door. Just send it back with your prepaid shipping and you'll have your lab results in just 2 business days. Their reports are simple with tailored seasonal recommendations for fertilizers and amendments. Order now at growsmart.com and use the code DAILY for 10% off. That's DAILY. Begin your soil prep now for a great spring with GrowSmart. All right, back to the show. All right, so not all that long ago, because our cat Charlie likes to appear in videos, someone asked me about cats in the garden and if the problems that they caused were worth the good that they would do. Specifically, sure, they may hunt some mice, but am I worried about cat poop? So I thought I would take a minute to talk about pets and gardens and what to consider. First, we have had both dogs and cats of our own around the garden and dogs and cats of others' own in and around the garden for as long as we have been farming. So dogs and cats are obviously 2 different things in terms of management. With outdoor cats, there is no management. Keeping cats out of your gardens is practically impossible, or at least not financially feasible. I mean, you could try, but cats cannot easily be fenced, and maybe to some extent they can be trained. But for the most part, either our cats or stray cats are going to use the bathroom where they want to, and there is not a whole lot you can do to stop them except provide alternative places for them to use the bathroom that are more attractive than the garden mulch. For emphasis, no matter what your feelings are about this, cats are probably using your garden for their personal potty. Sorry. Cats love bare soil. They love compost mulches. They will use your gardens pretty much regardless of how you manage them. If you see a cat, it's probably just too late. Luckily, it is generally pretty obvious where they have used the bathroom most of the time, and in my experience, they are not tearing up lettuce beds to poop. And thus contaminating it. They are too lazy for all that. Cats want a bare open spot to use the bathroom. They will dig a hole, and then half-heartedly cover it, at which point you can either flag the area as you are supposed to, based on the Food Safety Modernization Act, FSMA, and or you can clean it up if you want. I rarely, if ever, find cats have used the bathroom around food that is going out to the public anytime soon. It's just too much work for them to kind of dig around a bunch of plants. There's no need for it as long as you have other mulched areas nearby. That isn't to say it won't happen, and they won't use a bathroom next to something you want to harvest. And you should be vigilant if you suspect any animal has pooped near produce. It's not sanitary. Just that I don't lose a ton of sleep over it, especially given how many mice and voles and moles my cats take care of. Now, for dogs, well, dogs can dig holes. That's something they're very good at. And they can also smash crops, another thing they can be good at. But rarely do they use the gardens as a restroom, in my experience. Plus, unlike cats, a deer fence will keep a dog out. A rabbit fence will keep a dog out in many cases. Cats, not so much. And unless there is something in there that they want as much as a cat wants the mice under the tarps, for instance, a dog is not going to bother that much in trying to get in. We have had Great Pyrenees named Wendell who lived in our gardens. We didn't even have to fence that garden because he protected the gardens so well from deer and rabbits that we didn't need any fencing. Now, he would occasionally sleep on top of some lettuce transplants, but it seemed like a worthwhile sacrifice, the price of doing business, as it were. At our farm, we do not have the same type of dog. Wendell sadly passed away a few years ago, and he barks probably too much for where we live now. But a couple of our neighbors allow their dogs to run free. Sometimes this absolutely drives me nuts, especially when I find them digging in the compost piles. But honestly, our deer damage is basically nothing right now, and I suspect a big reason for that is those dogs. So, like with any pet, there is give and take, even your neighbor's pets. There is so much potential for using pets in the garden, rat terriers, guard dogs, etc. I also love cats, and our cat is now over 10 years old, and she still brings us mice, voles, and moles regularly, and a lot of joy because I battle with her all the time. She's great. Can't imagine this farm without her. Anyway, thoughts on pets in the garden? Horror stories? Heroic ones? I'm going to wrap it there. I mentioned yesterday that I'm starting a Major League Soccer fantasy league. The MLS is the league here in the U.S., and it's not the only league. It's just the one where Messi plays in. So anyway, you can join that. It's called Growers Daily. I'll put a link in the show notes. Maybe I'll come up with a prize or something for the winner, which will be me. So that will be great. Also, obviously, way more importantly, keep the people of Eastern Kentucky in your thoughts. Right now, it is so cold here, and the snow is not helping any sort of efforts clean up or help anyone. So keep those people in your mind, and I will once again put the links for how to support them in the show notes. And of course, before we go, I want to give one last shout out to the good folks over at Rimmel Greenhouses for making this show possible. Whether you're growing tomatoes for market, flowers in the spring, or vegetables for your family, growing in a high tunnel protected from the weather provides the right environment for a harvest you can count on. Rimmel Greenhouses are strong, durable, and easy to assemble. Again, I did it myself, and I'm not good with tools, offering the quality you need to grow productively year-round. The team of experts at Rimmel Greenhouse Systems will be your trusted partners to ensure you get exceptional value from your greenhouse or high tunnel investment. Visit Rimmel.com today to get growing. Big thanks to all of our show sponsors. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music and the team at No-Till Growers. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music you are hearing now. And still hearing, but I've turned it down. Pick up a copy of the Living Soil Handbook or the Seed Farmer at notillgrowers.com to support our work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/notillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or you sign up in the month of February, you get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs today to DeLorean. That's a fun name. It's like a D and an apostrophe, DeLorean. LG Johnson. Cool. And Andrew Brown. Awesome. This story is about a group of teenagers in the 90s, and they like you did in the 90s, they accidentally, they're trying to create like a soapbox car, and it ends up being a time machine as it goes. And, they end up, they jump forward to 2022. Seems reasonable. And interestingly enough, they don't stand out at all, right? Because this is kind of the style. But they do learn a lot of things, and they're also, the biggest one they learn, and I think they have like 15 minutes in the future, and the biggest thing they learn is there are really no flying cars. But anyway, they return back to the 90s, and they kind of got a glimpse at the future, and it doesn't really help them very much, but they do all invest in Apple, which I think is probably a pretty smart idea. So anyway, thanks for watching and or listening. We will see you tomorrow for Thursday. Thursdays are good days, I think. Usually, sometimes. All right, bye.